Chief Schultz, I was thrilled by the announcement made by Secretary Rollins about the rescission of the 2001 Roadless Rule. The Roadless Rule prohibits, as the name implies, road construction, and it also prohibits effectively timber harvesting on nearly 59 million acres of National Forest System lands, including 60% of the Forest Service land in Utah. By the way, that 59 million acres represents nearly 10% of the total federal land footprint. This is a significant amount of land. Now, while the intent of the original Roadless Rule may well have been to preserve the environment, in practical effect, in many ways, it's done the opposite of that. The practical effect of it has been environmental disaster. It's been devastating to forest health and to wildfire mitigation efforts. It's also added to the demise of our domestic timber industry. Last year, I asked your predecessor, a person who held this job in the previous administration, if the Roadless Rule had helped or hindered wildfire mitigation efforts. And he said, quote, "I don't think it was designed to help wildfire mitigation." Certainly a true statement and vastly understated in my opinion. Would you say that the Roadless Rule has helped or hindered wildfire mitigation efforts over the last 2 decades?
Senator Lee, I would say the Roadless Rule and what we see in terms of the data sets, there's about 24.5 million acres of roadless areas that are within the wildland-urban interface or within 1 mile of the wildland-urban interface. So by not being able to have areas that we can go into and manage or be able to put the fires out, that is a problem. So it doesn't help for sure, and it definitely hinders. And what you'll find out too is that many roadless areas are in fact roaded. So sometimes it's a misnomer. I was in Montana last week on the Helena, Lewis, and Clark Forest. There's a lot of roaded, roadless, same thing on the Lolo Forest. So to suggest that roadless areas are truly always roadless, that is not the case. In many cases, historically, we're roaded.
No, I get that, but that's not the point. The point is just whether it's helped or hindered.
It's not helped.
Good. Now, so what does the rescission of the Roadless Rule mean then for land management, for timber harvesting, and for wildfire mitigation on Forest Service land going forward? What does that look like?
Chairman, so the rescission, what that will look like is we will begin this fall, we will have a rulemaking process that we will go through that process to repeal the rule officially. There are 2 states that we will not be repealing the rule. That's Idaho and Colorado that have their own unique roadless rules, so those rules will not be impacted. But we will repeal the rule through a rulemaking process. We'll have public input in that process. And then ultimately, we would have to amend forest plans to adopt that strategy in those forest plans. But that's what we started this fall.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to discuss briefly the revisions to the Manti-LaSalle National Forest Management Plan. The 2023 draft of that plan included 122,780 acres of recommended wilderness areas. Now, to be perfectly clear, these areas do not meet the Forest Service's own standards for wilderness or for recommended wilderness. The recommendations also appear to conflict with the Utah Wilderness Act of 1984, which designated wilderness areas in exchange for the assurance of no future Utah wilderness designations. That agreement was seemingly ignored by the Biden administration. Will you commit to working with the state and with local cooperating agencies to reevaluate and remove these recommended wilderness areas before the final land management plan is complete?
So, sir, yes, we have received those comments from the state. They're being reviewed right now. We will definitely be working with the state in that review of that process and reconsidering those recommendations in the draft.
Thank you, and I hope you'll reach out to me as you do that in any way I can be helpful. I'd love to be kept apprised of that. Now, timber harvesting is a critical component of responsible forest management. It helps maintain healthy forest density, removes hazardous fuels by preventing fuel buildup for the fires, and supports rural economies across the country. And since 2000, just in the last 25 years alone, the average annual harvest from forest system lands has been just 2.3 billion board feet, far below both historic averages and allowable quantities. Now, just last week, we took a huge step in the right direction by enacting new timber harvesting provisions in the big, beautiful bill passed by Congress and signed into law by President Trump to help restore our forests and revitalize the domestic timber industry. What do you see as the biggest remaining barriers to increasing timber production on federal lands, now that this bill has been passed? And how do we cut through red tape and provide a degree of certainty for our timber and our sawmill industries?
Mr. Chairman, I think you hit a lot of the good points. The biggest thing that the sawmills are looking for is certainty and predictability, right? So the biggest thing is the Forest Service needs to do what they say they're going to do. So when you talk about, our sustainable supply and what we're doing, if we deliver what we're saying we're going to do, that's what the industry is looking for. In terms of barriers that are out there, we know litigations are barriers. But in terms of funding things, we're looking at other ways. You mentioned the long-term contracts that are identified in the reconciliation bill. That's something we will be looking at. We actually just signed an agreement with the state of Montana just last week to do a 20-year agreement where the state would come in and assist in managing federal lands. And that's something that we actually have some initial discussions with Utah to look at that and other states in the West as well. So we see that being an opportunity where the states can kind of step in and help us in managing those resources on a go-forward basis. So that's it. I mean, we're looking at other mechanisms for contracting. We're looking at working with partners on a go-forward basis. Litigation is something, and I know there are provisions and other statutes and laws you are looking at right now to help with some of that. We've talked about the Cottonwood decision many times, but that is one that is out there that still creates some hurdles for us, the litigation piece.